There we go. Now we're live. So I'm here with my friend Holly Rudnick, who's up here in the Bay Area as well, right?
Yeah.
Whereabouts are you, Holly?
I'm just outside of Santa Cruz.
Okay. Yeah. I was noticing my screen doing something, but we're gonna figure. And there's yours doing a little moment. Well, we're settling into the energy, but oh well, I'm so glad to have you here, and I'm so thankful that you're up for this. Uh, yeah, in this continual exploration of the magic of conscious relationship and relationships and all the ways that can go. I'm noticing our screens keep taking turns doing a little blip. I don't know what that's about, but
I
well,
don't know. I'm not seeing
at
it on
least
my
they can hear
end,
us.
so.
Okay, good. Maybe it's just on my end. Cool. Um, yeah, so I'm so thankful that you're here and yeah, even willing to share some of what your story, how it's gone as you've moved into becoming an intuitive coach and as life unfolded after such things.
Hmm.
So yeah, so welcome. Thanks for
Thank
being
you.
here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah, and I
very
know that you were even kind of checking out some of the other conversations and even
excited.
really thinking about like, gosh, what do I have to bring to this, or what kind of reflections are going to come through on this topic. So yeah, so I feel like I just want to turn it over to you to let you just start to share what some of what's come through as you've thought about this and how it relates to you and what you've
Sure.
experienced and noticed.
Yeah. Yeah. I am an intuitive mind, body, spirit coach, and I came to that work in like 2018. I graduated. It was a year-long process, and I was really called to it, and didn't really know why. I had no intentions of becoming a coach, and I went through this year-long training, which basically is like coaching yourself, right? Working on yourself a lot. And at the end of that, I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, um, and spent 6 months being treated and healing. And as my teacher said, really going through like the master's PhD program of coach training, because
Hmm.
I had to draw upon all those skills and 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 really be present with it and reflective. And without that training, it would have been an entirely different experience. It's so
Hmm.
easy going through something like that to go down a rabbit hole of self-pity and the question of why is this happening to me and what did I do, and or who did this to me, how did I get it, and looking like outside yourself for all these answers.
Hmm.
And I really had to go inward, and I don't think I would have had the skills to do that before, because
Hmm.
I had to go inward, and I had to really learn how to receive, which when I was in it was
Hmm.
one of my biggest lessons.
Ah.
And as I get further away from the treatment and the cancer, I just keep reflecting on like what a great thing that was for me to experience, and how I just it's stuck with me. Just making the decisions to become a coach, saying yes to things like this when before I probably wouldn't have. It's so hard to put yourself out there, and just like not having that fear of being who I am. Like life is too short, and just embracing what's here right now. So as far as conscious relationship goes, it really hit me. Like I really had to dive deep into a relationship with myself, and my cancer ended up being such a gift in that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Wow. And that's what you we hear often when we get these, diagnoses, that it can be such this wake up call and the reason to really just start living life like we really mean to, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then how often that is what'll even create the healing was kind of interesting, right? When we start to get into what really is important and or even heal some of the issues that have been like for you noticing was about receiving more,
Mm-hmm.
right? That became kind of the place and the way for you to get better at receiving is
Mm-hmm.
so interesting, right? How life can bring those lessons in. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and receiving just kind of, as I always say, it's an onion. It was just one of the layers, but like you get to one layer and you start to peel that back, and then it allows another one to unfold and to see what's in under there. And if you didn't go through that one part, you couldn't get to the rest of it. Right. It's just
Mm.
like that. floating down the river of life, right? You just got to keep going and see what kind of pops up. And yeah, it was just it really was such an amazing experience. And it seems so weird to say that because I wouldn't wish it upon anyone, and I definitely don't want to go through it again.
Yeah.
But it really, I spent 6 months before COVID indoors with myself, uncomfortable, just not, really feeling alone a lot of the times, and knowing that I was the only one who could get myself through this. And at the same time, feeling so held by my community and my friends and family who were definitely there to support me. It was just like really an eye-opening experience.
Yeah. And, and I always, one of the pieces I always feel like would be so challenging with being like in the midst of a cancer diagnosis and healing that is just like the mental fears, and like, how do you keep yourself from, right, just continually picturing the worst and getting so lost and heavy in that. So, I mean, do you have a recollection, or even now, even more of a thought on fear and how you like to deal with it with yourself? Because right, it seems to be a part of every experience, perhaps, but especially that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, when we were kids, cancer meant death. Like we were just taught that. I mean, from seeing it play out. And so that was, of course, the first thing that entered my mind is like, I'm not ready for this. And of course, worrying about my family. And thankfully, very soon after my diagnosis, I was reassured that this was a curable cancer, and it was the best cancer to have if you were to get one. So that was reassuring. So I didn't have as much of that fear going in.
Nice. You had a little like the practitioners even giving you that reassurance.
Giving them that reassurance. It was interesting. They also talk about the life before cancer and life after cancer. And they're like, you're going to be really different. And I'm like, I don't understand what you mean. But they've even see that. Like there is a definite shift. And that fear, though, is definitely there. And it brought up a lot of my thoughts of dying, which, I really hadn't thought a lot about my own mortality. And that brought a lot of that fear up, and I deal with that in wondering, is it going to come back? And I had to kind of come to terms with that. And I remember one day I was driving, and I just had this feeling of peace wash over me. And I just had this feeling that when it's my time, I will be ready. And whether it's my time tomorrow or my time in 30 years, I know I just had this feeling that whenever it happens, I will be ready and it will be okay. Because there's this fear of it, of not wanting to go. But I think when we get to that point where we know there's going to become a peace over us, like, okay, and that kind of brings me comfort. But it's a really uncomfortable place to go. Like no one likes to think about their own death.
Yeah. But there is something that can be so centering about it. Interestingly, right? Because there are meditations out there about just imagining your own death as like a way to just stay present with the reality of things, I guess. So it's interesting how it's such a therapy. And I find that so fascinating that the doctors told you you're going to be different, like that they've noticed people change. I wonder, what sorts of changes, what if you had to do some general ways, but in addition to like maybe a different relationship with fear, what are other changes do you feel like you've seen in yourself, or even if you're aware of other people's process in going through something like cancer, right? So interesting. And maybe it's this different for everyone, but if there's anything, that comes to mind as a thread.
I think it's a huge wake-up call. And like, I think it is different for everyone. I think a lot of people can go through an experience like this and go right back to where they were. I kind of look at it in a spiritual sense, like I was given a lesson. And I tried to ask myself, what can I learn from this? And I did, and that was because of the work I had done training as a coach. When I was in it, I was like, okay, what can I learn from this? What is this happening for me right now? And I think a lot of people, don't have to be involved in any of this, spirituality or the woo-woo or whatever you want to call it. They come out of this going, okay, what is the point of all this? Like, what am I doing? It allows for a lot of self-reflection. And I think a lot of people can bypass that. I was given the message, like, if you don't learn the lesson now, we will bring you another one, and it will not be, it'll be worse, or it'll be more stark, because you have to, we go through life to kind of learn these lessons, I believe. So for me, it was like, okay, what is my lesson? What is going on? And I'm still like pulling back the layers of that. Like, it's still evolving to me, but I think it's so important then just to be present to that. Okay, what am I here to do? Like, if we're not here to learn, like, I think that's like our thing. And we come from a homeschooling background, so I think that's like, we have always told our kids, like, learning is lifelong. Like, you are always learning, and we don't mean book learning, right? We're always learning about ourselves and what it all means to us, and what our path is, and our journey. And so that for me was big. And I think the doctors see that. I think they saw shifts in people, like, because you go, after you're done, you go meet with your doctor once every 3 months. Like, they see you and they ask you how you're doing. And I'm sure there's a definite shift in a lot of people.
Oh, fascinating. Yeah. Yeah. So interesting. And I love that you bring up the homeschooling reference, because if we bring in what some of us see, that like learning is happening all the time, and that everything is educational, then that applies to us too. And I love that, though, how that was like this mantra and this grounding question that you were asking with yourself and continue to, that has been so helpful. Like, what am I learning from this? What am I learning from this? And just that alone can shift a perspective so much, right? And just whether we feel like we're asking that of ourselves and kind of just getting our brain to just focus on that a little bit more, or we feel like we're spiritually asking, what am I learning from this, or all of the above.
Right. Yeah. You don't want to fall, like, it's a slippery slope. It's so easy to fall into, why is this happening to me? And become the victim in the situation.
Right. And it's that's a subtle shift in a sentence too. Yeah. Like, why is this happening to me, to what am I learning from this?
Yeah.
It seems like a very similar question, but the nature of it is different enough to change how it's going to affect us. Oh, wow.
Completely different energy around the two questions. And no one would fault anyone for being in the victim mode when they're going through something like that. Like,
But that's important, probably, to go through that, letting yourself feel sorry for yourself, to go through that. Absolutely. I'm sure, as compassion.
But if you can just shift that perspective slightly to the, what can I learn from this? It's more empowering. You feel like you have a little bit of control with the, why is this happening? It's really an out of control feeling, right? So it was really helpful to feel like I had some control of this. Like, no matter where it was going, if I was going to die, if I was going to live, like, I had some control of how I was going to show up to that. And that was just everything,
like, gets you really clearer on what you do have control over, and wanting to really take hold of that. And I'm curious, what do you feel? I mean, it sounds like we're getting some of what kind of tools and practices or things you were doing with yourself and continue to do with yourself that maybe are part of your intuitive coaching. Are there other things that you felt like have been really helpful as part of, like, how you like to use what you've learned with yourself and what you recommend with others, that have helped you throughout? Whether it's like, I know you do a lot of journaling, meditation, things like that. You want to speak on that a little bit more? Like, some of the, does that make sense? Some of the things you had learned and that you've been practicing and continue to feel like are the real kickers.
It was important for me to start paying attention to my diet, to what I was putting in my body. I've been thinking about being a pescatarian for a long time, and I made the shift after I was sick. And that felt really good. And I'm not saying that's what everyone should do, but like, something's whispering to you, maybe that now's the time.
So even being intuitive about that, it sounds like, to kind of just have a sense that for you, it was about a food change. And then actually making the change. Okay.
And actually making the change. Definitely my meditation practice, my doing some inspirational reading for me. I started off with more guided meditation. When you're going through chemotherapy, one of the things, and I was on a lot of pharmaceuticals because of I
Mhm.
had the tumor was causing a lot of pain.
Mm,
So I couldn't read for a period. I couldn't
mm,
really focus. And so I went
mhm,
into this really dreamlike state, and it was
mm,
very like imbalancing or
mm,
like wobbly. So when
mhm,
I kind of came out of that, I slowly kind of got back into journaling and reading and meditation. And
mm,
now it's become like a part of my daily practice. Like before I was like, I do it like a few times a week and not on the weekend. And then I was doing it all week, but not on the weekend. And now I've started to push it like into my weekends and throughout.
mm.
And it really helped. Journaling actually is the one I struggle with the most, is like getting myself to write some stuff down on paper. And that's kind of like my next step. But I think it's so important that if we can even integrate a little bit of something, like a couple minutes into your day, to it'll it'll start the momentum going in the way you want. You'll start feeling better, and you'll start bringing things in that feel better. And I
Mm.
want to say, when I was going through it, I wasn't doing anything but laying on my couch and watching TV, because that could like take my focus off my pain that I was having
Yeah,
for a good part of it,
yeah.
and taking baths, like Epsom salt baths with essential oils, and listening to podcasts. Like that was kind of
Mm.
my meditation.
Yeah.
And so it's important to go really easy on yourself, when you're going through something like that. Like
Mm.
what you think of as traditional self-care or things you should be doing to
Yeah.
reflect on things is not what might not be working, right?
Yes, right. That's
So
where you're so thankful for like Netflix or right
yeah,
or anything that can entertain you for sure.
anything that can
That's part of the
entertain you.
therapy.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, sitting outside and listening to music with someone was part of it. Like it looked really different, but I had to go easy on myself, and like just kind of ride the way through it. And then when I came out of it, really start reflecting and saying, okay, like I definitely knew that I had to change from what I was doing before, which I thought was pretty decent, what my life and my
Yeah,
spiritual
right.
practices.
Yeah.
But it became apparent that it was time to go deeper. It was time to become
Um,
more deliberate with my
mm,
actions for me.
yeah.
That's what spoke to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And yeah, it's just so powerful to think about how yeah, those kinds of experiences can change us, and the self-reflecting can be such a part of it, right? And
Mhm.
and I'm wondering now, do you find that you still are in a more of a sense of like being easy with yourself and just remembering to play and enjoy life and not getting too serious about things? Or do you find, like you're like the rest of us and back to kind of battling with that?
Oh, it's
Right.
a back and forth. I
Yeah,
think
right.
definitely something stuck.
Yeah.
I like with the family unit, I allow my family to help me more.
Ah.
I I feel less guilty on
Mm.
letting someone else do the dishes, for a very simple example.
Yeah.
When, there were certain things that would bother me, I've let some things go where I'm like, no, I can
Mm.
I can honor myself right now and go upstairs and take a shower and let everyone else finish up and not feel bad about that. Like, and that's a huge thing for a mom sometimes,
Mm.
just to be able to do those little things. So yeah, I think about it a lot. Like I don't want to forget the lessons that I learned. So
Yeah.
I check myself when
Uh,
everyone slips back into old patterns and habits, right? I mean, that's just normal. It's like it's two steps forward, two steps forward, one step back. It's just you constantly, and sometimes you're 10 steps back. But
mm.
the magic is, with this work I think that I do, is to know that when we feel like we've taken 10 steps back, when we're in that really yucky place, we
Yeah.
know that we can come out of it. We
Mm.
know that we're not stuck there. It's just we have to live there for a little bit. Like if you've fallen off of all your routines and everything, you just start adding them back.
Mm.
It's
Mm.
just, that's all you do.
Yeah. And I just get a sense of from you and your process that it is about this more compassionate way with ourselves, right? That even though we can come out of experience like that feeling so driven to do things differently, there's also maybe this awareness to not be too driven, right? To
Right.
also just,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think you and I have had some interesting conversations about that awareness of even like our inner state and how important that is, right? And how so many of us just cruising around really kind of half stressed out and not, um, yeah, in a state that's not so healthy, right? And
Mhm.
it's really making our system so vulnerable. So it's, yeah, it's interesting to not wait until, we've gotten a diagnosis. But when we get a diagnosis, that happens for all of us, right?
Mhm.
The body always will speak up to get our
Mhm.
attention. And I love how you remind, it's such a gift, right? It's really just, and to be in that, like, what am I learning from this?
Mhm.
As
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
mantra.
Yeah. It was such a
uh,
gift. Yeah. And yeah, what you were speaking to reminded me of that conversation of those feelings like that we have and like the stressed out and stuff and how important it is to just like really honor those feelings and sink into those feelings and move those feelings through our body. And, one of the things I added in was your 20-minute yoga routine in the morning. And that's just been such a gift to me of movement right away to just move some things through and breathe. It's not all about sitting still, right?
mm,
Sometimes we just
mm-hmm,
really need to move things through our body and listen to them. That pain is for me, it started out as I thought I pulled a muscle, and it kept getting worse and worse and worse. And I laugh. I'm like, why didn't we go to the emergency room? Like I was
mm,
in a lot of pain. And
yeah.
I was like, oh, I must have pulled a muscle. Like, no, you got to listen to that. And I remember having the feeling once in the doctor's office, we should go to the emergency room. And I pushed it aside and was like, no, no, no. It's, I don't
Mm,
want to,
yeah.
whatever, that be a burden or it's not that big a deal and stuff. Like, we really need to like listen to our body talking to us and listen to those whispers and listen to our intuition about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it could be a pulled muscle, but it's like those are also emotions stuck there. Those are
Wow.
also things talking to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh. And I think it's so exciting to consider how you're working with people now as a mind, body, spirit coach, like facilitating intuition. It feels so evolved and practical. It's just even a goal for any kind of therapy, right? If we're gonna wind up being more intuitive, I love that as like the theme of it all.
Mhm.
That's the goal here, right? Is
Yeah.
to to help people reconnect like that. And yeah, wow. And I mean, how do you like to talk about intuition and like describe what you feel like it is? Like if you were describing it to your teens or something in your
Yeah.
current sense of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, intuition is something we all have. Um, it's just like a knowing or a sense. Some people have a feeling. Some people will see a picture. Some people will hear something, a noise or something speak to them. Um, it's like not in a literal sense our intuition. It's a different language.
Mm,
But it's like, I like the simplest explanation is like, when you're thinking of someone and then they call you like within that day or week or whatever it is, and you're like, I was just thinking about you. Like
mm,
that is your intuition, you
mm,
know?
mm-hmm,
So for me, I get a feeling and I can, if I tune into somebody, sometimes I can see pictures of things
mm,
that'll resonate with them. And it's interesting. It's like a language.
mm,
So what I see, like just for example, I can see like a, I've seen like a calm lake, a woman swimming through a calm lake, and for me that can mean like that, knowing that this person we're talking about is at peace. But for somebody else,
mm,
that can mean something else. So like your intuition is very personal. Like when
mm,
you see a yellow butterfly, for me, it might not mean anything, but for you, maybe your mother who passed loved yellow butterflies. So for you, that
mm,
is like a reminder of her, and that's your like intuition kind of speaking to you. So
yeah, yeah.
it's really fun to play with.
Mm-hmm,
I would call myself like a beginner.
mm,
Um, but it's really, really, really fun to play with. Like the more you get into it, the more you just have fun with it. And that's all it is. You just have fun with it. It's
Yeah.
nothing. It's not, one of my
Mm.
teachers always said, there's nothing serious going on here. And I love that because that's
Yeah,
just true with
right.
everything. Right.
Wow. Yeah. And yeah, just how it's something to play with is such a nice perspective. And I love how you say it's really personal for each of us. So that makes sense why we would keep learning and growing and developing it and understanding our own sense of our intuition, right? And then what sorts of things are going to mean various things. So yeah, why we'd want to have like a relationship with our intuition even, right?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that really could be like the goal of a lot of like therapy and coaching really is to help ourselves reconnect with that, right? So that we can now like live like that. Yeah. Totally
Yeah.
makes sense. And
Yeah.
that is going to really change our health
Mm-hmm.
physically and mentally, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then just change how we're making decisions.
Yeah.
And,
No, for
uh,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah. And it's,
Yeah.
yeah, as coaching, I'm coaching people, like that's kind of my goal is to like help them, they kind of learn their intuition, learn their language and
Mm,
listen to what that voice is saying inside of us, because I really like all the answers lie within you. You can't, you're not going to go to a coach and have them tell you all your answers and what you
right?
should be doing.
Yeah.
You,
Ah,
you have to learn to listen to your own knowing,
mm,
and that's just
yeah.
so powerful for people.
That is, and what a great way to empower people. That's really going to like change how someone's living life and even how their life is unfolding, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's just very solid, even though it is like this abstract
Yeah,
concept. It
totally.
also still feels very solid and practical to have that be the goal of the
Mm-hmm.
coaching, right? And then I'm imagining you have ways that you're helping someone do that with like maybe adding new practices and new
Mm-hmm.
awarenesses and questions they're asking themselves and things like that to keep honing that.
Yeah.
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 Wow.
We'll dive deep into whatever subject, we need
Mm.
to. A lot of it is just like, little stories you've told yourself, lessons you learned
Ah.
when you were young that aren't
Ah.
true, but you just still believe. And you just have to
Ooh.
kind of unravel those and
Interesting. Yeah.
yeah, and figure out, where did I learn that? And do I really believe that still, even though it keeps
Ah.
repeating for me? And when we go through life not listening to ourselves, we get caught up in those stories. And then we wonder why do I always, end up dating these guys? Why do I always end up in a job I hate? Why do I always, whatever it is? And it's probably because you're repeating a pattern that you learned when you were young of, this is how we
Mm.
do it, right? So if we can
Mm.
just like shift our perspective, undo that a little bit, it can like completely change your life.
Mm. Right. And that's fascinating to consider how our belief systems can kind of block our intuition
Mm-hmm.
or just limit our ability to listen to that or believe
Yeah.
in,
Yeah.
in what we're hearing.
Yeah.
So, or what we're sensing. Yeah, that, wow, I love it. It's such a evolution of things like therapy and coaching. It really makes sense. Um, yeah, well, I mean, gosh, I guess we're getting towards the end of our 30 minutes, but is there anything else that you'd want to say along the lines of conscious relationships, and how that's related?
Like sum it all up.
Or yeah, or just anything else you still want to say. I like to kind of make sure you have time for that if there was
No,
something
yeah,
brewing or coming through.
I think that, yeah, I think that was a great conversation. I think we touched on a lot of important things. So
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
pretty happy with all of it. So
Thank you
yeah.
so much. And yeah, well, I know you have a workshop happening this weekend that is for parents, right?
Yeah, for
And will you
moms,
tell us a little bit about that and then we
yeah,
can, so people
I'm
can
doing
find
with
us?
it a fellow coach, and it's we're talking about self-care and self-love for moms
Mm,
and how that's
mm,
important, and what it looks like, and how you can fit it into your day, and it's probably not always what you think, what you think it is. We have some
mm.
pretty original ideas for you on how you can just take some moments and fit it in. So I'm
That
doing
sounds
that
really
this
nice.
weekend. I
Yeah.
think that's Sunday at 2 actually. And there's information on my website, which is hollymbscoach.com, Holly Mind Body Spirit Coach.
And that is
So
a free workshop,
it's a free
correct?
workshop.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a free workshop. It's a group we kind of formed called the Mama Collective. There's 3 of us, but one of us just had twins, so she's taking some time off. And we're going to be offering some longer workshops, but we just wanted to offer this free one.
Great.
So,
Okay, so people could connect with that group too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I'm so stoked that you've been here. And then, oh yeah, and then just to mention that you and I are brewing up a little something that we are picturing on March 6th as a collab of intuition and practice and how that goes together. So yeah. So oh my gosh. Well, I'm so thankful to have had you here. And thank you for sharing, some of your story and experience with us. Really eye-opening and awakening. Yeah, important. Yeah.
Oh,
So,
thanks,
thank you
Laura
so
Jane.
much.
This is really fun. I love having these conversations. So fun.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you all for being here with us. We're glad to share this with you. Hope some of that was helpful for sure. So, all right. See you all soon. Thanks and adios. Namaste.